Hello learners, I am Dr. Nilima Chopra and today I welcome you to this session on other forms of diversities in the classrooms and their management. We find that in our classrooms there is an increasing number of learners from diverse backgrounds. This can be attributed to the efforts of the government as well as the voluntary sector on enrolling all children in our schools and classrooms. Also, there has been a special emphasis on reaching out to the children from the marginalized groups, which has led to a lot of diversity in our classrooms. The diversity can also be attributed to the increased migration of people from one state to another state, from one region to another region. And therefore, we find that in our classrooms, there are children with a number of diversities. We find there is linguistic diversities, there are geographical, rural, urban, remote areas, children from remote areas coming to the classrooms. We find that there is a lot of diversity based on the religious or the minority groups. We find cultural, ethnic diversities, and we also find that there are children who belong to the lower socioeconomic strata and from the poverty affected families. In the Indian scenario, caste system also plays a major role, and there are children from varied scheduled castes and scheduled tribes. There are gender differences in our classroom, and we also find that there are children with special needs in our classroom. So how do we deal with this diversity? Well, teachers have different responses or different reactions to this diversity in the classroom. Many teachers might deny that diversity affects their classrooms, or they might be aware of the diversity but are not happy about it. And these two, the first two responses, can be attributed as negative responses to diversity in our classroom. There are other teachers who might be aware of the diversity and think that they can tolerate the differences and they can recognize the differences by arranging remedial or separate classes. A more positive response is reflected when the teacher is able to meaningfully engage all the children in the classrooms irrespective of their diversities. Also, it is found that the teacher is able to help the children or the students learn to the best of their ability in the classroom. Then it is a positive reaction or a response to diversity in a classroom. According to a UNESCO document, if the teacher has a negative response or a reaction to diversity in her or his classroom, then there can be some problems in the classroom management, and these problems are listed on your screen. A teacher is unaware of how cultural differences regarding education influence student participation in her classrooms. So when she has a negative response to the differences or diversity in the classroom, she becomes unaware of how behavior varies across different cultures. A teacher also might allow certain students to dominate class discussions, and she might not give equal opportunities to all the students in the classroom. A student makes a gender stereotypical remark which alienates the girl students, and this problem might arise if the teacher is not aware or sensitive to the gender differences in the classroom, or she does not know how to handle these differences in the classroom. A teacher addresses only few boys or girls in the classroom, and she alienates the other girls and boys in the classroom. There might be a case where a student ridicules the gender, the religion, caste, or socioeconomic strata of a particular student. And because of the insensitivity or because the teacher does not recognize the differences or diversity in the classroom, she is unable to manage the situation. Another very common scenario is when the teacher knowingly or unknowingly discriminates children with special needs in her classrooms. Now, all these reactions or responses in the classroom can have a very negative impact on the learning of the child. And such behavior in the class can lead to many problems. Students can become demotivated to learn. They may drop out from the classroom or the school. The socially disadvantaged students, such as students from the scheduled castes or scheduled tribes, tribal communities, or different ethnic and religious minorities, or students from the economically weaker section, girl students, Especially, all these categories or different types of students are specially found to be vulnerable and may lead to a dropout from school in case the teacher is unable to manage the diversity in her classroom. Inclusion provides a solution for all this. Now, what is inclusion? Inclusion is the child's right to participate and the school's duty to accept every child in the school, in the classrooms. And this basically stems from the United Nations Convention on the Rights of the Child, which was adopted in 1989. Inclusive education is now concerned with establishing equity of provisions for all children and rejecting the exclusion or segregation of learners for any reason whatsoever, including disability or their special abilities, languages, gender barriers, poverty, or ethnicity. Now, if we look at inclusion, it is both a principle as well as a process. It is a principle because we believe that every child is important. Every child is different and unique, and therefore their abilities need to be nurtured and strengthened and motivated in the classroom. Every child can learn, every child needs to participate in the school activities, and this all stems from the main principle of social justice, aim to achieve equal society. We say that inclusion is a process because we need to make our schools accessible to all the students. We need to talk about curriculum redesigning. We also need to think about strategies to ensure that every child is learning properly and appropriately. Also, we need to respect the strengths of each child. Therefore, we can say that inclusion is about putting the right to education into action by reaching out to learners, respecting their diverse needs, abilities, and characteristics, and eliminating all forms of discrimination in the learning environment. And to do that, we need to ensure that all children are included in the classroom activities and the school activities. These might be poor or children belonging to the disadvantaged or the marginalized groups. They might be children or students from the minority groups. They might be working children. We also have to provide equal opportunities for children living in remote, rural, and tribal areas. It is also important that children and students from ethnic and linguistic minorities are included in the school and the classroom activities equally. Similarly, children with health problems or with certain disabilities also need to be included into the class activities accordingly. Now, let us talk about children with special needs. When we talk about children with special needs, we generally are talking about students who might have a physical handicap, they might be hearing impaired, they might have cerebral palsy or mental retardation. They might also be cases of learning disability, speech problems, or multiple disabilities in your classroom. However, we need to understand that segregation is not the solution towards managing a classroom with these diverse students in the classroom. We need to look at inclusion as one of the important strategies or the principle on how to include the children with special needs. We often find that children with special needs are subjected to negligence, segregation, deprivation, and discrimination because of their physical or mental characteristics. And the wide-scale negative social attitudes towards them is also very, at times, prominent. And if we see girls with disabilities suffer a double disadvantage. This has a definite effect on the dropout rates of children with special educational needs. Now, if you look at the recommendations made by the focus group of NCERT, it is very important that in order to include children with special needs in our classroom activities, we need to do certain things like removing physical barriers, removing barriers created by admission procedures like screening, identification, and so on and so forth. Also, we need to build capacity of teachers to function in an inclusive setting. We need to have flexible curriculum in order to accommodate children with disability in their cognitive as well as non-cognitive areas. Making support services available and making the use of appropriate ICT, TLMs, and specialists like speech therapists and so on can really help in effectively involving the children with special needs in the classroom activities. There is also a very important need to involve the parents and communities when it comes to engaging children with special needs effectively in the classroom. Also, we need to think of developing certain partnerships with other institutions which have a specialization in managing children with special needs. Now, let us talk about some other forms of diversities which might lead to discrimination in the classroom. Generally, curriculum delivery and pedagogy in many schools of India are discriminatory towards children belonging to socially backward classes and marginalized communities. It has also been found in some studies that teachers refuse to touch children, or they subject children from marginalized communities to verbal abuse and physical punishment. Frequently, we also find that children from the certain castes might not like to mingle with children with the other castes. And these kind of discriminations might be found in some classrooms. We also find that children in remote, rural and tribal areas do not get access to high quality schools. Similarly, children living in poverty, especially urban areas, often do not have access to quality education, which is also discriminatory in a way. And when they are enrolled in certain schools, they face discrimination and often drop out of schools as a result of this discrimination. Children belonging to linguistic minorities and religious minorities may also face discrimination in the classrooms, and their learning needs might not be met with. As a result, their academic performance is not good, and they are not able to achieve their full potential. This problem is also very relevant for the girl students in our countries. Girls in our countries may face many problems and challenges in the classrooms. As a teacher, therefore, it becomes very important to meaningfully engage students from diverse backgrounds so that all students learn effectively and participate in school activities. Now, let us discuss what are these ways in which a teacher can accept diversity in his or her classroom. A very important thing that the teacher can do is recognize or develop awareness of her own biases or stereotypes. It begins with an internal reflection. When she becomes or he becomes more informed about the history and cultures of groups other than what the culture or group that she belongs to, then it leads to more awareness, and it also leads to more understanding towards different communities, ethnicities, and religious minorities. A teacher also needs to rectify or look and introspect at any language patterns or case examples that might exclude or demean any groups of children in her classroom. It is very important that the teacher be sensitive to terminology that refers to specific ethnic and cultural groups. A teacher can also reflect human diversity in her classroom, and while preparing for class activities, questions or discussions and assignments or exams, she can think of examples from diverse groups of cultures, ethnicities or religious groups and cite those examples in the classroom. It is very important that the teacher model to new ideas, because if the teacher is the role model for the teacher and she is open to new ideas and different ways of thinking, she is encouraging children also to accept diversity within their classmates. It is also important to set certain ground rules for respectful interaction in the class. The teacher also needs to encourage discussion among students and educators themselves. Also need to discuss what are the diversities they find in their classrooms and how can they manage, and if there are any stereotypical or prejudices against any cultural or religious group in the amongst the educators themselves. The teacher can also use certain video recordings or role play situations to help students discuss the stereotyping and exclusion of certain segments of the population and to find positive solutions. This can be done in the classrooms with the students. It can also be done with the educators. It is very important for the teacher to reach out to silent students in her class. And she should encourage the students who are silent or shy in the class to participate in the class activities with more encouragement and motivation. It is also very important that the teacher is observant towards any issues of power in the classroom and she discourages any power issues in the classroom or any type of behavior which is discriminatory towards other groups of children. Whenever possible, it is very important that the teacher selects certain texts and readings whose language is gender neutral and free of stereotypes. Or he or she should be able to cite the shortcomings of material that does not meet these criteria. It is very important for the teacher to use language that is gender neutral or that uses female pronouns as often as male pronouns. The teachers can also incorporate students' native language in the classroom activities. This will help students belonging to linguistic minorities to feel more welcomed in the classroom. And if possible, the teacher can also learn and use a few words in the children's native language in the classroom. This would be very encouraging and motivating for the children belonging to linguistic minorities. In the classroom, it is very important for the teacher to treat each student as an individual and respect each student for who he or she is. It is very important that the teacher addresses each child's educational needs and conveys the same level of respect and confidence in the abilities of all her students, irrespective of the background or the diversity that she experiences in her classroom. Aim for an inclusive curriculum that reflects the perspectives and experiences of a pluralistic society. The teacher can give assignments and exams that recognize the students' diverse backgrounds and special interests. This will help in encouraging the students belonging to linguistic minorities, religious minorities, and ethnic minorities to participate actively in the classroom activities. A very effective strategy in encouraging students to participate in the classroom is making them work in groups. Therefore, the teacher can use collaborative learning and peer learning. The teacher can also give students many opportunities to work together in small groups, maybe groups of 3 to 5, on a variety of problem-solving abilities, which stresses the importance of using personal experiences. Also, it is very important that the teacher involves parents and families in various class activities or in discussions. Another way of handling diversity and encouraging diversity in the classroom is by bringing in guest lecturers or guest teachers to foster diversity in your classroom. The guest teachers or the lecturers can provide a variety in the classroom which can help the students to understand diverse points of views. By bringing in different people to the classroom as resources, the students might be able to connect with. Therefore, the teacher can search out people that are different from herself and that might have certain qualities, who might share certain qualities with her students. Students also need role models. Many times when they see that they are connected in some way to a person, they will be more willing to listen and to learn from them. So bringing in more people as resource persons in the classroom also helps and encourages children belonging to the marginalized communities. If the teacher aims to create inclusive classrooms, then the following factors need to be considered. What is the syllabus? What is the course content? Is there certain flexibility in these in order to incorporate the diversity in the classroom that she has? She also needs to keep in mind her class preparation. She should prepare herself so that she can accommodate the diversity in the classroom and give assignments or projects based on these diverse backgrounds of the children. She also needs to understand what is the classroom behavior, and she also needs to have a knowledge of the students' backgrounds and skills. It is very important that the teacher enhances the self-respect of individual students by referring to valuable ideas and comments they have made in previous classes. Therefore, by reinforcing positively the students, she can encourage that all students participate in her classroom, especially the children who belong to diverse backgrounds. It is also important that she uses differentiated instruction in the classroom. Now, differentiated instruction is a teaching approach in which you adapt your instructions according to the student differences. So, if you have certain students who are doing very well in the classroom and there is a group of students who's not doing very well in the classroom, you can make use of differentiated instruction and use an approach where you adapt your instructions according to their abilities and differences. If you look at certain differences in the learning styles of students, we find that students often have 3, 4 or 5 different learning styles. There are certain students who use their visual abilities more. There are certain students who use their audio abilities. Certain students who prefer to use their read and write abilities. And certain students who learn very effectively using their kinesthetic abilities. So for the students who use mainly their visual abilities, it is very important that we design and arrange and lay things out nicely for them. Their spatial representation is very important and they understand patterns, shapes and symbols. They also get extra meaning from coloring, spacing, formatting, and they work very easily with graphs, charts, maps, diagrams and anything symbolic. So for the visual students who make use of their visual abilities in the classroom, she can have activities or plan activities wherein the visual abilities are used quite often. There are certain students in the classroom who use their audio abilities very well. They learn through talks, including self-talk and discussions. They may not understand something until they have said it themselves, and they like to repeat it to themselves. They would also prefer to speak their learning if there was an opportunity. They prefer teachers who use words well and who can explain things clearly in the classroom. And they often like to communicate using the phones, email, texting, chatting and so on. Well, these students learn very well using these kind of activities and the teacher can incorporate various auditory activities in a classroom to cater to the needs of these students who learn primarily by using their audio abilities. Then there are certain students in the classroom who make use of their read and write abilities. That is, they learn through examples of the written word, they learn through books, dictionaries, references, and the spell checks are very important for them. They also admire those who write well and use interesting words. They gather quotations, articles and lists. They use handouts. So certain students therefore use their read and write abilities and the teacher can cater to these students by arranging a number of activities which help the students to read and write and use their abilities accordingly. For the kinesthetic students, they learn through experiences, especially their own, and they want concrete experiences. They like videos, simulation, games, case studies, and they want their reports and projects to be done as demonstrations, experiments, and class surveys. They often use real-life experiences to explain things, use examples. They learn with exhibits, sample newspaper stories, and therefore the teacher can use these activities in order to encourage and make use of the kinesthetic learning abilities of the students. Therefore, by creating different kind of activities in the classroom, the teacher can cater to different abilities of the students in her classroom. Therefore, we see that in a classroom we find a number of students with from diverse backgrounds and with varied abilities. They might belong to different ethnicities, different religions, different regions, and therefore this concept of multiculturalism is gaining a lot of importance in education. And when we talk about multiculturalism in education, it refers to promoting tolerance and understanding. It is appreciating and accommodating similarities and differences among students' cultures. We are also talking about including resources, celebrations, artifacts, and festivals from varied cultures. It is very important to take time to learn about your students' backgrounds, interests, and learning styles. This will allow the teacher to create an environment that is conducive to each student in the classroom who may or may not belong to the marginalized community. It is also very important to allow time for the students to learn about each other and gain an appropriation for the diversity that they bring to the classroom. Therefore, the teachers can remind them how boring it would be if all of us were to be alike and there were no differences amongst us, so that each child or each student is a unique student. We can also teach our students that everyone has their own strengths and weaknesses. And when we are working in teams, we need to encourage students to take advantage of the strengths of the team members in order to promote and produce the best possible results in the classroom activities. It is also very important that the teacher should never tolerate any kind of bullying, teasing, and other put down behavior in any time in the classroom. Therefore, the teacher can implement a zero tolerance for anything that is disrespectful, hurtful, or intolerant of diversity in the classroom. We also need to correlate our teaching styles with the learning styles of the students and think of activities which are catering to different learning styles of the students in order to develop their strengths and the abilities rather than highlighting their limitations. We can also make use of sign language or braille for students who require that special facility in the classroom. But most importantly, we should emphasize on building a positive relationship with our students in order to manage diversity in the classroom. We need to understand the ways in which students learn. We need to share stories of their home life, like festivals they celebrate and other cultural activities that they might engage in. We need to show students pictures of people from different cultures and ethnicity. We can help students relate with the similarities that they have with diverse groups of people. Also, the teacher can talk of role models of famous personalities from different cultures. This would really encourage and motivate the students. Teachers often face challenges to use the diversity in these classrooms constructively. Last year, therefore, we can say that diversity is not a challenge, but the teacher needs to face these दोबारा से. Therefore, we can say that diversity is not a difficult thing to manage, but when the teacher sees diversity in the classroom and uses it constructively, then she can manage the diversity in the classroom and encourage all the students to participate. It is very important for the teacher to understand the diversities and learn about different ways to make the classroom and schools more inclusive. Also, it is very important that the teacher believes that all children can learn. And therefore, she needs to plan activities keeping in mind the different learning styles of the students. Use of effective teaching learning processes and practices so that all children can learn. And planning for this can really help in managing the diversity in the classroom. We also need to think of achieving the overall aim of social justice and providing education for all children in the classrooms and in our schools. So learners, we will meet you in the next lecture. Till then, thank you.